Good morning. I'm happy to be with you here today. We are continuing on, and we're actually getting close to the end of our study on ancient Roman civilization. We've learned about how it began, we've learned a lot about the middle, and now we're going to be coming to the end and drawing conclusions. So here's a map of the ancient Roman Empire. If you can take a look at that. There is, if we were standing right here in Rome and we traveled this direction, what direction are we going? We're traveling east. That's right. And there's a lot. All of this is Asia. So the continent of Asia. If we were in Rome and we traveled this way, we would be going north. That's the cardinal direction north. And this is Europe. Here we are in Rome and we travel this direction. We're traveling west. We hit Spain and then the Atlantic Ocean, but this is Europe as well. And if we are in Rome and we travel south, we would run into North Africa. But take a look at this yellow. All of this is the Roman Empire. It's a vast area, gigantic, huge. And there is one emperor here in Rome. They have now switched over from funding their own armies, people who claim Rome in their blood, it is their place, to mercenaries, wherever they would need to hire a soldier. They've hired soldiers. Mercenaries don't fight with the same zeal as native-born Romans, which is what this lady was saying, this patrician woman that we listened to last time was saying. She said that might be the reason why our empire is sort of falling apart. And she says, maybe we should just start over again. Just remember the directions as you're looking at a map: north, south, west, east. If you're looking at a map with north at the top, and most maps are oriented that way, although you will need to look at a compass rose to make sure. But most maps are oriented with the north at the top. If the north is at the top, there's a little word, it spells we in the middle. West over this direction, east this direction. So from the central point where you are traveling, you would travel this direction and you're going west. Travel this direction, you're going east. And it will spell we. Just an easy way to remember it. You know north is at the top and south is at the bottom. Of most maps, check your compass rose. Don't let it trick you. Okay? Sometimes people just try to trick you just for the sake of tricking you. You have been writing opinion papers, thinking really carefully about topic sentence, what your whole paragraph is going to be about, or if you have multiple paragraphs, what your first paragraph will be about, stating your thesis. And you have decided what you think is the most important Roman contribution. That's your opinion. Now you have to support that with actual ideas and facts and details. Make sure when you are supporting that, you're using words and phrases like therefore. I believe this, or this happened, therefore I believe this. Since this happened, it shows me that this is a lasting contribution. For example, because make sure that you are using ideas from the story, facts from the story, details from the story to support your opinion using linking words and phrases. Today in our reading, you will hear these vocabulary words. Complex. Complex is made up of many related parts and possibly difficult to understand if something is complex. Dominant. more powerful or important than someone or something else, or leading, persecuted, treated cruelly, often because of religious beliefs, skin color, or political beliefs, or mistreated. If you're persecuted, you are mistreated. A vision. We're not talking about eyesight here, but we're talking about a mental image of something, a clear idea about how something should be done would be a vision, to have forward-thinking vision. What have we learned so far? Well, how do we know there was a civilization in ancient Roman times? Well, the Romans were a group of people living together in a well-organized way. They built cities. They developed writing systems. They had leaders and laws. They practiced religions. They grew their own food by farming, and they had different people doing different jobs. Who are the main characters in the legend about the founding of Rome? Romulus and Remus. Do you remember their story? What facts can you remember about Julius Caesar? He was an accomplished soldier. Remember, he did not get to be a priest of Jupiter because of conflict with another family. He was dictator of Rome. He conquered the land of Gaul to the north of Rome. Practice going north. Here's Rome. Going north and over here, this is really Gaul. This is Germany. He secured the alliance between Rome and Egypt. Rome and Egypt down here. This Nile Delta area still today provides goods that are exported all over the world. It is still a place where many exports originate. What facts do you remember about Augustus Caesar? He was Julius Caesar's successor, which means he came next in line, and he was the first official emperor of Rome. He greatly expanded the empire. The empire reached its vastness under his rule. He also won a civic crown like his father. He initiated the Pax Romana, or the Roman peace, continued the alliance between Rome and Egypt. What events contributed to the decline of the Roman Empire? And we're talking many hundreds of years after Caesar Augustus, or Augustus Caesar. Because remember, the peace lasted for 200 years, and then there was this continued decline after that. Many emperors and senators became greedy and selfish. Real problems were ignored. Rome hired mercenaries instead of asking their own citizens to fight for Rome. The citizens of Rome grew weak and lazy. Children barely learned their history of Rome's greatness or power. Okay, when we are reading, please make sure that you pay attention to the titles of chapters that you are reading. Titles can provide information or clues about what you will read or hear about in a story. It almost could be a summary statement. So this title today is Western and Eastern Empires. Western and Eastern Empires. Now, we've talked about the Roman Empire. Now we're talking about Western and Eastern empires. Do you have a prediction about what this might mean? Well, let's revisit that after we read and see if your prediction was correct. The Western and Eastern empires. In the previous lesson, you learned about the many invasions that led to the decline of Rome. You learned that the Roman armies had become weak compared to the days of Julius and Augustus Caesar, and that they relied on paid soldiers or mercenaries to protect Rome. You also learned about how the Roman emperors and senators wasted lots of money on bread and circuses, gladiator games, chariot races, and other luxuries, but did not spend money on the things that would keep Rome safe. The Roman Empire simply became too vast to handle. It was impossible for a single emperor working with senators and proconsuls to control everything that was happening over thousands of miles of Roman territory. And there were many selfish emperors as well. The governors and generals in charge of the Roman provinces could do as they pleased. Over the course of many years, Rome itself became less and less important to the people who lived and ruled the Roman provinces, which stretched from Italy to the surrounding areas of England, France, Spain, North Africa, and the Middle East. So even though Rome was the center of the entire empire, it was hard for people who lived all the way up here in what is present-day England or Gaul to be that excited about the city of Rome because they were 1,000 miles away. The same with people living over here. They were not as excited about Rome, the city, as they were about their own cities. Roman culture changed in important ways as well. We know that the Romans always tried to bring their own laws, lifestyle, and culture to the countries or tribes they conquered. But at the same time, the Romans ended up adopting or taking on parts of the cultures that they conquered. In other words, even though the Romans had their own culture and traditions, they also picked up new ideas and customs from the people they met in faraway places. Remember the phrase that you learned that means when you travel, you often follow the customs of the foreign places you're visiting? When in Rome, do as the Romans do? Well, even the Romans who left this little area around the city of Rome, when they went to these faraway provinces of the Roman Empire, they did the same thing. When in Cairo, do as those who live in Cairo. When in Jerusalem, do as those who live in Jerusalem do. When in Constantinople, do as those who live in Constantinople do. So even the people who left Rome followed that same proverb, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. One of the biggest changes in Roman culture involved the rise of Christianity. Wow, that's a mosaic. Amazing, isn't it? Christianity is the religion based on the teachings of Jesus. Among other places, the Romans conquered Jerusalem and the surrounding lands, so they were in charge of the area where Jesus was born. In his lifetime, Jesus was known as a teacher. He told parables, which are stories with important lessons about life and about God. Many people, including his 12 apostles who followed him everywhere, believed that Jesus was the Son of God who had come to earth to bring a message of peace and hope from God. One of the most important symbols of Christianity is the cross. Jesus was crucified or killed on a cross. And in Roman times, crucifixion was a common punishment for criminals. But Jesus was not a thief or a murderer. He was accused of treason by the Roman Empire, meaning many Romans thought he was trying to overthrow their power. Jesus was not, however, found guilty of any crimes by the Roman governor, Pilate. Christians believe that after Jesus died, he came back to life and rose from the dead, an event known as a resurrection. Jesus became the central figure in the religion of Christianity, which slowly but steadily spread from Jerusalem in all directions. At first, many Romans did not like the Christians. Christians refused to accept and worship Roman gods, so right away there was a conflict between the two groups. It sounds like the Christians did not follow that when in Rome, do as the Romans do. However, some Romans understood that different people worshiped and prayed to different gods. So some Christians were allowed to worship and build churches in Rome and in other parts of the empire. But that does not mean that the Roman emperors favored this. Some, including the fiddling Emperor Nero, you've heard about, really hated the Christians and did awful things to stop the spread of Christianity in the Roman Empire. For the first couple hundred years after the start of Christianity, Christians were often persecuted, tortured, and harassed throughout the Roman Empire because they would not worship Roman gods and goddesses or worship the emperor himself. Many Christians worshiped in secret to avoid this persecution. Remember, to be persecuted is to be treated cruelly, often because of one's religious or political beliefs, skin color, or social status. Eventually, however, many Romans started believing in and following the teachings of Christianity. Rome became a very important center of Christianity, even though most emperors and senators did not like it. By AD 300, which is 300 years after, during the Pax Romana, okay, during that 200-year time that Caesar Augustus had set up, Christianity was spreading, and new churches seemed to dot the landscape as abundantly as the temples to Jupiter and Apollo. Around this same time, the empire itself was going through another big change. The Roman Empire was so vast and so complex that it needed to be divided into two parts: the Western Roman Empire, with Rome as its capital, and the Eastern Roman Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire would be ruled from a new capital city called Constantinople. Constantinople was named after an important Roman leader, and his name was Constantine the Great. So take a look at this map. Here is Rome, and you can see where there's this line dividing the red part from the yellow part. Look at Constantinople. Constantinople is in Asia. But this yellow includes large parts of Asia. This is Europe, and this is Africa. So this is the Eastern. Remember, we talked about going east, Eastern Roman Empire. The Western Roman Empire included Rome and most of the areas to the west that Roman Empire ruled, including things very far north in England, France, many parts of Germany, Spain, Northern Africa. Take a good look at that map. Constantinople is named after Constantine. And he was a great Roman leader. Constantine the Great was the first Christian Roman emperor. He made laws ending the persecution of Christians. In fact, Constantine the Great said that individuals should be allowed to worship whichever god or god he or she chooses. So there were no laws against any religion in the Eastern Roman Empire. That sounds a little bit familiar, doesn't it? If you think about the United States Constitution, there really are no laws against which religion anyone in the United States is allowed to practice. Because Constantine the Great was a Christian, under his leadership, Christianity continued to spread. The founding fathers of the United States believed citizens should have religious freedom. Do you remember who left Europe to come to North America because of religious persecution? So there was still persecution from religion coming from Europe, and they sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, ended up over here in North America. Remember? The Pilgrims did that, started it, and many other people left as well. Constantine brought new hope and confidence to many Romans. His new city of Constantinople was a chance at a fresh start. Ooh, sort of like what that older lady had thought about while she was sitting here in Rome, watching the outskirts of Rome be attacked by people. Even with this new start, politics were just as difficult in the Eastern Empire as they had been in Rome. Under Constantine's rule, there was still conflict and warfare. Meanwhile, the city of Rome remained the center of the Western Roman Empire, as well as the center of Christianity. The political situation in Rome was worse than ever. Emperors came and went, and many politicians could hardly agree on anything. Worst of all, wars were breaking out in the north as more and more surrounding tribes started looking for new homes on Roman land. Before the Visigoths invaded and sacked Rome for the first time, Christianity had become the official religion in Rome and the Western Empire. So before the Visigoths, before this woman was sitting in Rome, watching outskirts of Rome burn, Rome had become a Christian empire, as well as the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. Rome as one capital, Constantinople as another capital. Unlike the Eastern Empire, there was only one legal religion in Rome. Rome became the center of a Catholic Church, a branch of Christianity, as well as the home of the Pope, the leader of the Catholic Church. So the Western Roman Empire adopted Christianity as the only religion, whereas Constantinople and the Eastern Roman Empire allowed a plurality of religions. But while Christianity was becoming the dominant religion in Rome, the people who the Romans considered barbarians were becoming the dominant force along the empire's northern border. And as you've heard, first the Visigoths and then the Vandals sacked Rome, stealing and burning everything in sight. Eventually, the Eastern Roman Empire completely separated from the Western Roman Empire. Once separated, it wasn't called the Eastern Roman Empire anymore. And by AD 410, the Eastern Empire was known as the Byzantine Empire. That's sort of a funny word. Can you say Byzantine? Not associated with Rome anymore. It was not going to have the name of the Roman Empire. This photo shows the most famous Byzantine church, the Hagia Sophia. The Byzantines built many churches, but none compared to the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. It is still standing today after more than 1,600 years. That's an amazing thing. This structure has an elaborate dome similar to the Pantheon. It's architecturally impressive inside and out. This building has, I want to say, changed hands many times over the hundreds and hundreds of years that it has been standing. It started as a church, in Christian Constantinople, it was changed to a mosque after Muslim invaders conquered Constantinople 100 years ago or so. It was turned into a museum, not a church or a mosque. And now, very recently, it has been turned back into a mosque. So the building has not changed that much, but what its uses have changed over the 1600 years that it has been standing. By AD 500, the Western Empire had fallen apart. Okay, so where Rome was, the empire was there was still Rome. Rome was still a city. Italy was now sort of the center, all this of what used to be considered the Roman Empire. It had shrunk down to really just what we consider the country of Italy. Most of the provinces fell away to one barbarian tribe or another. So there was no longer any Gaul. It would have been Vercingetorix's descendants would have retaken that area. And a Byzantine emperor in the Eastern Empire, the Byzantine Empire, Justinian, raised a mighty army and marched west to conquer the Western province, thus waging new wars in the very same areas that Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar had been hundreds of years earlier. So instead of coming from Rome and conquering west, the Byzantine Empire was starting in Constantinople and traveling east to conquer territory. As emperor, he developed a body of Roman laws called the Justinian Code. The Justinian Code was a collection of past laws from previous emperors, in addition to laws that he had developed himself. The Justinian Code is one of Justinian's major accomplishments as emperor. Justinian appears in the center of this mosaic, which you can see today in an Italian church. Despite Justinian's effort and other emperors' efforts, there was no way to keep the Western Roman Empire together. The Byzantine Empire continued for almost 1,000 years in the East, and the Western Empire in Europe, from Italy across France and Germany and all the way to Britain, drifted into a long, sad period without leadership and vision from the powers of Rome. The glorious Roman Empire finally came to an end. Let's consider some questions. Did your thoughts about what an Eastern or Western Roman, Eastern and Western Empire, did that come true? Did your predictions come true? Maybe or maybe not. I bet part of it did. Part of my prediction came true, where I was thinking, wow, if part of it is Eastern and part of it is Western, it has to be divided somehow. And we heard how it was divided. Why was the Roman Empire divided into two parts? Because it was too vast and complex to be ruled by only one emperor. And which side of the Roman Empire, the Eastern or the Western, lasted the longest? Actually, the Eastern Roman Empire lasted the longest. After the Eastern Roman Empire completely separated from Rome, what new name did the Eastern Empire have? Its new name was the Byzantine Empire. Describe how Christianity developed in the Roman Empire. Jesus, who was born in this region during the time, was the central figure in Christianity. And at first the Christians were persecuted, but eventually Christianity spread and became the official religion of the Western Empire. It became common in both the Eastern and Western empires of Rome. Who was the first Christian Roman emperor that ended the persecution of the Christians in Rome? Constantine the Great. And what did Constantine the Great do to promote freedom of religion? He said that individuals could practice whatever religion they wanted. He made sure that there were no laws against any religion in the Roman Empire. Do you think he was a favored or not favored emperor, and why? Well, to those who wanted to practice their own religion that might have been different from their neighbors or different from something that had been practiced earlier, he was probably really a favored emperor. But to those who wanted this empire to be held together and everyone to have a common religious belief, he was probably not favored. Which Byzantine emperor had the vision to reconquer the lands of the Western Roman Empire after they had been taken over by rivaling tribes? Emperor Justinian. What was Justinian's major accomplishment as emperor? The Justinian Code. And what is the Justinian Code? It's a collection of laws from previous emperors, in addition to laws that he developed himself during his rule. Do you think he was considered a favored or emperor? Why or why not? It might depend on where you lived. If you wanted Rome to regain lands that had been lost, and if you wanted a return to a gigantic empire that maybe could have been united, then you probably favored his efforts at war to go and reconquer that. But if you were people in that area who had just fought a war with the Western Empire, you were not happy to have the Eastern Byzantine Empire coming and try to reconquer you. So probably some liked him, some did not. What city was named after Emperor Constantine? Constantinople. What is the name for the present-day city of Constantinople? And in which country is it located? The present-day city of Constantinople is not named Constantinople. It was changed to Istanbul, and it's in Turkey. Who can name, there's a strait near Constantinople that you have learned about before? Let me see if there's a good map near. I love a good map. Okay. So Constantinople is now Istanbul. If you looked on a current map, you would see a dot right here for Istanbul. On the western side of Istanbul, you would be standing in Europe. If you cross the Bosporus Strait and you go to this side of Istanbul, you're standing in Asia. How cool is that? One city on the border of Europe and Asia. Why do you think Romans persecuted the Christians? Do you have some good ideas? That persecution started during the height of the Roman Empire, when governors were still completely loyal to one central government in Rome. So if you had somebody promoting a different religion that didn't worship the Roman emperor, who was considered divine, he was considered a god himself, you would want to destroy that religion. And there were many other uprisings all around the Roman Empire that were shot down. Many up here in the northern part of Europe who were destroyed by Roman armies, and they tried to destroy the Christian religion by killing the leader, Jesus. All right, we will end there and continue tomorrow. Thank you for listening.